In this video, I'll show you how to recreate this really cool Instagram viral, and it includes this really cool 3D effect and of course some AI images. The original reel is made by BartVFX, so a big shout out to him. And if you want to download these assets that I'm gonna use in this video, you can always do that in the description down below completely for free. Now let's jump into it. First, I'm gonna break down the video a bit. So you'll see a caption here and you'll see that it will pop up with a glow, which is not that special. And then we have this really cool light streak transition and it goes straight into this AI image with a 3D effect, and it zooms in to this other image where it then transforms and you will see these really cool 3D, you could call them Doritos or you could call them triangles. You could also call them pyramids. Anyway, they look really cool, and then again a cool light transition back to the video. Now we're only 3 seconds in. I'm just gonna see how far I can get in this tutorial because the other shots are quite the same, and I would just want to keep these tutorials as short as possible. Although what I can do, I'm gonna launch my masterclass soon. And because it's gonna be a monthly subscription, I'm just gonna add a lot of these in-depth video lessons into that community. So do keep an eye on that. For now, I'm gonna just use these images that I generated. I used a ChatGPT with DALL-E. And I just use a couple prompts, and it's always a bit a trial and error. Sometimes I'm not happy with it. This was my first image. As you can see, there's not enough depth to work with. So the keyword add depth to the like foreground and background is really good. And that works for everything. If you want to create some depth, it's always easier to then edit that later on. And then I ended with these two images, but then I generated this one, and I think this one is even cooler. So I'm gonna just copy this over, then just press new file in Photoshop, clipboard, create, paste. Then I'm gonna use the object selection tool, and I will quickly go through this because I had some feedback of you guys that I spent way too much time in Photoshop. And also this process is always the same. So this will also be the same for the other image. I'm just gonna quickly mask this. So just click on the mask tool, and then we have our person. We can even call this person, and then next duplicate it. Delete the layer mask at the bottom, hold Command on Mac or Control on Windows and click on the mask. And then we're gonna go to the bottom layer, image, content aware fill. We'll go to select and then modify, expand by 5 pixels. And then we'll go to edit, content aware fill. And this looks pretty fine. I think this will already work. We can also see if generated fill will get better results. So I'm just gonna press cancel and I'm just gonna press generated fill. And let's see what it did. Yes, way better results. You see, with these things, you just have to test it out. Sometimes the content aware fill works better than the generated fill. And in my experience, the content aware fill works better when there's not too much detail. Generated fill, as you can see, works really well with this. So I'm just gonna quickly select both layers, and then I'm gonna rasterize the layers, and I'm gonna merge the layers. And I'm just gonna call this background. Gonna delete the white background and put our guy back. And I'm happy with that. So this is the first one. I'm just gonna quickly do that with the other one too. And there we go. I have a foreground and background with this image. Also happy with this. And I'm just gonna save this as a PSD. So I have my test video in here. We're just gonna use that for now. Like, you're not looking at my face enough. I'm really sorry guys, you're gonna have to see even more of me. And I'm just gonna grab some light transitions out of this video. Just drag it over the video and then change the mode to screen and then scale it up. And then just let me check if there's a cool one. I quite like this one, and I'm just gonna cut it off like that. So it starts out with a light leak. Then we're gonna add text, and this is not that special. We'll put here do not. You know what? I'm just gonna keep it something like this. Again, to not 100% copy him. And I can't say this enough. I create these tutorials so you can learn how to do it. Copying is really the easiest way to learn, but the end goal should never be to copy. The end goal should be that you learn how to do it so you can apply it to your own project. And then if you know how to create the style of 10 creators, then combine it all and create your own style. Now I would do the do not with a standard animation preset. And I would do that because then it's replaceable. You can always change it. So what I would do is duplicate this, go to the bottom layer, go into text, and then open the top layer too, open the text too, and then connect this source text to this source text. And this is a bit more advanced, but you'll see what it does in a moment. I'll now go into the text and then animate in. I'll just use the fade up words effect. Let's turn the bottom layer off, and then you'll see that it fades in. Now, this could be an effect that you could use, but in this scenario, I want to not fade them in, but make them go in really harsh. So let's just open up the animator, open up the range selector, then advanced, and then turn the smoothness on 0%. So now the words just pop up. Now that's cool, but we still need to do one thing, and that's get this bottom layer, turn it on, then press T for transparency, and then lower the opacity. And then if we go back to the beginning, you'll see the text and it will say do not. And what's cool about this is that it's replaceable. So let's say we want to say donut, then it will still work, or even Tom's project, and it will still work. And this is how you can also use this for different projects. And this bottom layer will always take the same characters as the top layer. Quick little trick. Now I'm gonna move the light swoosh. So just hit Alt bracket to cut it off, and I'm just gonna move it over a bit. Press U on the top layer, the text layer, and then we can adjust the timing a bit because we probably need to do it really quickly. These reels, they go so quick, you can't click away, you can't scroll away. And then after this light swoosh, I want to go straight into the animation. Also make sure that the light swoosh is above everything, so it's even on the text, otherwise it's not going to be a cool effect. Now there is also a scale in the beginning, and I would just keep it simple. The simplest way to do a scale is to just link all the layers to the bottom layer by parenting them and then pressing S on the bottom layer for scale, and then just zooming a bit, because this doesn't have to be 3D per se, and this is already cool enough. Now let's go to the really juicy part, and that's the 3D animation. And if I open my prisoner one, which I imported, then we'll see two layers, a person and the background, exactly what we wanted. So we're gonna just copy this over into our Instagram reel composition. I'm gonna move it over a bit, and I'm just gonna make sure that it will fit our composition. And because these are just two layers, it's gonna be really easy, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna make it 3D. I'm gonna create a new camera by going to layer, new camera. I'm just gonna keep it simple with a one node camera and maybe a 50mm camera. Press OK. I'm just gonna make sure that the test fit is gonna be on top of the other layers, and I'm gonna cut it off when the light leak is the brightest. So press Alt bracket to cut it off, and we can even, if we want to, keyframe the opacity, which I do think is smart to basically make sure that there's a seamless transition. So this is cool. And now we're gonna do the camera animation. And we're gonna do that by first making sure that there's depth to our image. So I'm just gonna press P for position, and then I'll make sure that the Z axis is to the front, something like this. I might even move him over a bit, something like this. And then I'm gonna grab the background and I'm gonna just scale that up, making sure that it will fit the image. And let's now go to the pen under cursor tool, and let's see if there's enough depth to this. I do think so, so I think we can work with this. I do like the background to be a bit darker, which we can actually do really easily by just decreasing the transparency or adding a brightness and contrast to this. I might just go to effects and presets and just add a brightness and contrast to this, because I think it's always a good way to do it with color grading instead of the opacity, because it just works a bit better. Now this is perfect, and I'm just gonna press P for position for the camera. Let's just zoom in a bit and just make sure that on the first keyframe there's already directly some motion. Let's move forward a bit, and then I'm just gonna zoom in quite a lot, and I'm just gonna go through him, and you will see why in a moment. If I now play this, you'll see that it's quite a boring animation. First of all, we can of course select the keyframes and then right click and then easy ease it. But there's another way to really make it dynamic. One is adding rotation to it. And that's always just the Z rotation. We can just keyframe that and just move it over. So there's a bit of animation going on. And again, select all the keyframes, easy ease them. Right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Now there's one more trick to make this even more dynamic, and that's by going into the perspective or the top, it doesn't really matter. Then we'll press P for position, we'll select that keyframe, and what you will see is you can see the camera here of the camera. So when we play this, you'll see what happens. It basically just goes straight and goes right through our image. But let's say I want to create a bit of depth to this and I just want to create some cool motion, then I can go around this image. So just grab the pen tool, set a point here, hold your mouse, and then we can just use the normal cursor tool to move this point. And let's just grab these handles and make it really smooth. We can even move the end keyframe to end a bit smoother. And if it then gets too close, we can always move this image a bit back and then scale it back down, which I might even do. Let's just go to the active camera back again and just see what the movement is like. And as you can see, there's a lot of dynamics and there's a lot of motion to this. Now, one thing I don't like is that it takes quite a long time to basically start the animation. So what we could do is or move this keyframe over a bit. That's one option. And I think that's already way better. Or what you can always do is, of course, go into the graph editor and then adjust the keyframes accordingly. For example, make sure that it goes a bit quicker in the beginning and then a bit slower at the end. Now this is really cool. One thing to add, and that's motion blur to really sell this effect. So just turn on the motion blur on the toggle switch, and the toggle switch of course at the bottom. And then you will see that there's a lot of motion on this. So there will be motion blur. And this is really cool. We just have to fine tune it a bit. And I do want to add text. We now see the do not text still in our screen. Of course, we have to cut that off. I'm just going to select them both and make sure that they cut off at the exact same time as the video. I'm just going to see what it looked like. I'm still not quite happy with the motion, and that's because I think this keyframe needs to be a bit sooner, and also I want the keyframe to really go around him. So I'm gonna go back to our top view, and this is of course different with every image. You just have to see what works best for your image. As you can see, if I select the keyframe here, then I can also just get back into our view where we were previously, and then I can just move this over. So there's basically a bit more, how do you say it? A bit more curvature to this. Let's go back to the active camera and let's see what it looks like now. Now I am really happy with this. I think this is quite cool. We just need to add a text to this. And I do think the background is still not dark enough, but maybe that's just also the image that we're using. Again, just play with this and you can always regenerate a new image. And actually to make it a bit more darker, I'm just gonna add a solid composite and then make it black. And then I'm just gonna change the blending mode to multiply. And then you can change the opacity to add basically like a black layer over this. I think that really sells the effect even more. And then of course we need the text, which again is just with a standard animation preset of After Effects. Let's just type the text here, become, then of course make it 3D. Then we can just move this over so to make sure that it's visible, move it up a bit and just make sure that it's a bit closer to the camera. I'm not the happiest with this font, but this will do. Then go to effects and presets, animation presets, text, animate in. And then I would just use a blur and fade in. And there are ways to do it differently. Maybe just the blur or maybe add a scale to it. One thing I'm gonna change is I'm gonna press U and make sure that it goes way quicker. Let's see what it looks like. It looks pretty cool, but I don't like where the camera ends because you can't see the text at all, which we can always adjust by going to the last keyframe, making sure that the text is at least in the screen. And then we can just go to our text and make sure that it's scaled down or we change the font size. Doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna move it up a bit. I'm really happy with this. Now after this, it's gonna basically zoom straight through. And to do this, we'll just go to project. We're gonna get our second prisoner. I'm just gonna paste him and I'm gonna drag it down. So we keep things nice and organized. I'm gonna make it 3D. Then when I zoom out, you can see the layers here, which is cool. But what is most important is that this is more or further to the back. So just press P for position and let's just move it down. Let's now press P for position. And then from here, let's move the camera further and quite far, maybe even to something like this. I'm gonna click on the keyframe. I'm gonna get the graph editor and I'm just making sure that it will go really quick. Basically just launching the camera into the space and then moving the last keyframe over so there's more of a ease in it. And then doing one more thing, and that's of course adding the motion blur to the text. which will really sell the effect. And then the last thing, we'll just press T for transparency on our background. And I'm just gonna, while this is happening, turn the opacity down. Now it goes into our next scene, which is our cool prisoner, which actually I'm really happy with the camera motion, but maybe we want to add a bit of rotation to spice it up a bit. Just one thing that's important is the alignment. We're just gonna select them both and just move it over. And then the trick once again is to move the guy more to the front. Press S for scale, because we're gonna scale him down a bit, otherwise he's gonna look like a giant. And I'm just gonna put him back at the bench, and I'm also gonna scale the background because we really need to make sure that the full layer is filled, and then we might have to adjust him again. This is always a bit of a puzzle to really get it how you want it. Just grab the guy again and just gonna place him down here. Let's see if there's enough motion. I do think so. I think this looks already really cool. Now actually with this image we can even use the puppet pin tool to move his book. I think that really brings this image alive. Just use the puppet pin tool and then basically set some points here and there. And then just press U to see our keyframes, move it over, and I'm just gonna move the book up, and I'm gonna make sure that the keyframes are eased. Now that is really cool. And again, in the bottom layer I think it would look cooler with a brightness and contrast to make it a bit darker. You can always add an adjustment layer with a cool color grade to blend everything together. Now the text is exactly the same how we did before. Just make sure that the position is the same as the guy so it really sticks to him. And now we're gonna create those cool Doritos triangles. And we'll do that by going to layer new solid, just make it black. And we'll add a CC particle world to this. Now you don't have to make it 3D because it is automatically 3D. And we'll just go into the producer. We'll just go into the particle and there should be a triangle. The polygon, and that already looks cool. I'm gonna do a couple things. I'm gonna just first move them more towards the back. They also become smaller then. Then the animation, instead of explosive, I'm gonna set that to twirly, or actually I'm gonna set it on fractal omni or uni. No, omni works well, I think. And then we're just gonna set the gravity to 0 so it doesn't go down. And then we already have this really cool effect. And once again, you only have to do this once because you can later just keep this. I'm gonna change the color to white, and the depth color you can turn it or to black or keep it on white so you can see it more. And then I'm gonna also decrease the birth rate and maybe increase the longevity, and you'll see what this does. It will basically have this really cool animation like this. And if you move this under the guy, then they'll be in the background. Now we can just press T for transparency and then just make sure that they're faded in while we fade out the background. So T for transparency again, stopwatch it and turn this really low. And then we have this really cool effect, and you can of course adjust the size of the Doritos, of the triangles or the pyramids, however you want to call them. And you can also do that by changing the birth size or the depth size. That will just make them smaller. And what's cool about this is that you can actually also change it into other shapes. And just test this out. Maybe you think this looks cooler with another shape. You can even do a textured one and then add a texture that you want. So I think this is a really cool effect that you can use in other projects anyway. Now the only effect that I haven't explained yet is this TV static effect. And this is just a footage overlay that you can put over. And then you get something like this. And as you can see, it's such a cool effect that you can apply to every project. And if you want to see more of this, do keep an eye out on my masterclass because that will launch soon. For now, thanks for all the support, especially on the last video that I posted. I'm so grateful that my audience keeps growing, and it already has been a crazy journey, and I'm really excited for the future. Don't forget to subscribe, and then I'll see you next time. Bye.